Good morning, everyone. My name is Colby Pitts, and I'm the Florida Friendly Landscaping Coordinator for Hernando County. I'm here with one of our Master Gardener volunteers, Bernie. Bernie, how you doing this morning?
Well, I'm doing really good. Sorry, Bill couldn't be with us. He's a multi-county man, and today he's over in Lake County, so they have him helping out everywhere. So it's good that we've got such a good man, but we really miss him when he's not available.
Yeah, well, we tend to get a little off the rails sometimes, get a little off topic. When Bill's not here, he's our guiding light.
I didn't realize we were supposed to stay on any particular topic. I thought this was a one of those programs where you could learn anything about everything.
There you go. So as always, go ahead and leave any questions you have in the comments. And even if you're watching recorded, go ahead and try to leave a question there. Bill does his best to answer those after the fact. So good morning, good morning. Bernie, do you have anything burning, any burning topics you
Well,
want to
I've
talk about
had
this morning?
a really good morning. One of those days when there were several things waiting for me. So, yeah, I've had poor lady that came in that's got a little 2 acre pasture with Kogan grass, and Kogan grass is one of those things that uh, people don't realize how difficult it is to get rid of. It forms mammoth clumps with a really heavy root structure, and you can go in and zap it with Roundup, and it comes right back, and
Hmm.
you can zap it with the most potent thing we.
With Kogan grass especially, you can't just go at it with like one of those broadleaf spectrum, something like Roundup. You have to. So Roundup's not really soil active, so you have to the best treatment method, and this still takes multiple treatments. It's still going to come back a little bit, but you're going to want to go after it with something that has soil activity, and then plus the Roundup. You want to hit the roots and hit the blades as well. Because the thing is it spreads by seed. It spreads by if the roots just get fragmented, you till it up and move that dirt somewhere else. It'll just grow wherever you move that dirt to. So you really have to be diligent and come at it from all sides. Because if you don't, you'll never get rid of it. You can burn it, you can mow it, doesn't matter. Um, it's a really tough one to kill, and it's absolutely everywhere. Um, every time that it comes up on here, I try to say a new place in the county that you can see it. The one for this week is driving on Wisconsin. On either side of the road, when you get near those pastures, there's coking everywhere.
Yeah, and if you don't take care of you now pass it on to your neighbors, and if your neighbors don't take care of it, they pass it on to their neighbors, and that's just one of those things. I noticed when I was looking up the uh, information to print out for the lady that the state considers it one of the top 10 invasive plants
Hmm.
in the world. So uh, kudzu and Kogan grass are two curses that we
Oh
shouldn't
yeah.
have to be living with. Those were both things that were brought here for a reason, and the reason wasn't very good. So it's.
Well, I mean, the thing is like with coking grass, especially if it would have been good for what they intended for it to be good for, like cow feed or something, it may not have been as big of a deal, but you just end up with acres and acres of it growing in every open area. It's around an interesting place if you're ever on the east side of the county, over on 301 heading towards Bushnell. There's a berm there. They have a mining operation right off of 50 and 301, and that has burnt two or three times in the last, I don't know, year and a half. And the last time I looked there, I was like, that's some healthy Gogan grass, and it had just burnt, I don't know, 6 months before. So um, there's not a lot I mean, especially if you're not going for it and trying to get rid of it specifically, you almost will never will never get rid of it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if you don't keep up, you're fighting a losing battle. So,
Hmm.
when I first started doing this, uh, there was a recommendation that uh, you do some uh, plowing to which made it uh, produce more roots, and then when you went in with Roundup on the first plants that were coming up, you would kill some of the roots. Well, it sounded good, didn't really work, but I love the way that it's finally got down to the point where it's just uh, cut it, spray it, cut it, spray it, cut it, spray it, cut it, spray it, and usually by the third year it's under control, and then you do that as often as necessary to keep it under control. They never say that you eradicate it, so uh,
You almost never eradicate it. It's kind of funny. I think invasive animals might be easier to eradicate than invasive plants. It's really really hard to completely because you mentioned fighting a losing battle. Invasive plants are a losing battle by nature. It's virtually impossible to uh, completely eliminate them. It's interesting. I was down in Venice, Florida, a few months ago, and South Florida's got those Brazilian pepper trees real bad. I mean, we have them bad here too, but down there it's especially bad. And what's funny is like you'll see them treating them, you'll see them doing doing right, but then you'll have somebody that has one that's got to be decades old, just growing in the middle of their front yard, and they're like, "Well, I'm not getting rid of this. I love this tree." And that's just like one example of those invasive species being a losing battle because that tree is going to produce God knows how many offspring every every season. So what are you supposed to do in that case? You can't go on a property and cut down a tree.
well, they can here. That's one of those things that possession. Well, I take it back. I don't know that Brazilian pepper is that way. Lead tree is that way. They can, if you don't
We
get rid of
You
lead
can't
tree,
transport it.
they,
I'm pretty sure that there's no law or ordinance against it growing on your property, but you cannot transport it. That's what I'm gonna look that up because I'm curious. But lead
yeah,
tree is in the
I
same
think
boat
that
though too.
if you don't get rid of lead trees, they can come in and do that here. That's one of them that there's only a couple that are truly prohibited in the county, and probably right after marijuana or something. So yeah,
I'm
I am just amazed at how uh, the ability to do all these things electronically. You're about 4 miles away from where we are, and we bring in Lily. We bring in people from all over the country. Lily comes in from Pennsylvania, makes this thing capable of being a national program. So all we have to do is get people to join in from all the states, and we can become the plant program for the entire country. And you know, we deserve it because we know all about Florida. So
oh yeah, you just gotta get some other area experts. I know we have Lily from Pennsylvania. I don't know too many people who don't live in Florida, to be honest.
had a some citrus leaves with leaf miner, and that's a problem here, but it's a major problem to the people in California. They talk about citrus leaf miner being one of the worst problems they have, and for us, for some reason that is basically a minor problem. And if you have citrus, I'm sure you've seen leaf miner. That it's a little trail, little white line that goes all around on the leaf. And the thing that happens is mama flies in, lays some eggs. As soon as the egg hatches, the little guy buries down in the leaf and stays between the two sides of the leaf. He's actually inside the leaf, tunneling along. When he gets to the end, he's capable of flying, and he leaves. So uh, if you don't spray it the very instant the egg's laid, there's no other time that you can actually do much about it. So Uh, they're annoying. They distort the leaves. They aren't pretty, but unless they really affect a really high percentage of the tree, they don't really hurt the tree all that much. And that's another one of those insects. It's not really native. They didn't start being a problem until the 90s. So uh, is I wondered where all these little insects uh, survive and come from when you realize that guy came from someplace else in the world and hit upon the one spot in the country where it could really survive. And uh, it survived a trip on a ship or an airplane in somebody's luggage in a container, made it from the port to one of the orange groves somewhere, and just thought they were in heaven and took off. So you know, it's
It's
amazing,
crazy because
and
yeah,
we
I
get
mean it's
so many of those every month. We get a new one.
hmm imagine how many don't make it. How many, major crises have been avoided because the exact the exact sequence of events didn't happen, and oh, instead of getting transported in a leaf on an airplane, it happened to freeze up there. It's in the luggage compartment, it freezes up and it dies, and we don't never have to deal with it. It is super interesting. We do have HOC Family TV says my pepper plant has these tiny green bugs all over. What might
Probably
those be?
aphids,
Yeah.
and I'd spray them. Um, Food plant, soapy water, uh, horticultural soap. That is a really safe thing to use this time of year, and it zaps so many insects. The insects don't breathe; they don't have set of lungs like we do. They have little holes in
Mm.
their skin, and the air just enters through the little holes. And you spray them with soap, and it fouls up their breathing apparatus. So and it doesn't hurt anything, doesn't poison your plants. You don't have to worry about uh, did I put something into my peppers that I don't want to be eating? So I'm a big
Yeah.
believer that uh, get you a squirt bottle, and if there's some commercial hort soaps that we know are safe. Uh, Supposedly, Dawn dish liquid is
Yeah.
safe, but you have to be careful. So many of these liquid things really aren't soaps; they're detergents, and detergents, one, can damage some plants, and second, they aren't as effective as soaps. So uh, I think probably using ivory soap, cutting it up and using it to make a soapy solution uh, would be a very, very effective horticultural spray. And the nice thing about
Hmm.
it is those things are dirt cheap. You've probably got an old Windex sprayer around someplace or something like that, and just put together a little spray bottle. And when you walk out and then you start looking at things in the garden, just carry it with you. You see some little insects popping up and you don't see any ladybugs or anything on the plant, go ahead and give them a little spritz. Now, if you got little green bugs running around it and you see ladybugs coming in, they're probably going to take care of the problem for you. So
Hmm.
don't go spraying the ladybugs. We want to keep them going.
Yep. Another question here. Where can I buy finger lime in Central Florida?
Um, you know, that nursery up at um, Panasofsky is the nursery that's producing them. Um, I would
Was it?
imagine, and they're wholesale only. So uh, you can probably go to one of your local people, local nurseries, and they can get it for you. The big box stores probably aren't going to be able to help you because big box stores have central purchasing and they don't go buy a few plants. But most of the actual nurseries deal with I can't think of the name of the place, but it's up, like I say, Panasaki. And one problem is uh, the finger limes uh, may not be suitable from a temperature standpoint. That depends on where you are in Central Florida. And it also depends kind of on the variety. They tend to be uh, variety sensitive for the area. They're not all cold hardy. And we had somebody here in the area that put in a grove of finger limes, and they got damaged by frost. And the fellow down at Auburndale at the research center said it's the wrong variety for the county. So uh,
Hmm.
the finger limes are relatively new, and there isn't a tremendous amount of knowledge yet. There's a program. There was a program last month for uh, the people in this profession on finger limes that the university held, and I didn't get to go. It was one of those things I really wanted to because they had a free lunch on top of all the knowledge, and if there's a free lunch involved, I'll usually go. But uh, it was on a day when I had something else that I couldn't take care of. But the finger limes, um, they're really neat. They're kind of like the caviar of citrus. Uh, there's several varieties, and um, I have no experience with them because they're too new. Uh, the university's people at Auburndale have all the experience. They've had growing centers. I believe it was 6 places across the state trying to find out what varieties were best for each location. So at this point, there's some pretty good information, and it was just released a week ago. So uh, if you want to send an email, I'll see what I can find out and send you some reference. But other than that, I can't really tell you that much. It's too new, but it's a good thought if you want to get involved in key lime or in finger limes, and you're in an area where there's an appropriate plant. It's a neat plant.
Good to know. One thing I kind of wanted to mention was I get a lot of calls where I'm being asked what I'm being asked where people can buy certain plants, especially ones that have been mentioned in any of our literature or any of this, any even on Plant Clinic and stuff. I get these calls, and if it's not something that I know that they sell at the Master Gardener Nursery, I I'd like to tell people like you can order plants online. You can. There's nothing wrong with it inherently. But what you have to do is make sure that it's in like the same geographic area that you live, that these are grown there. So, if you live in Florida, you don't want to order a plant that from a nursery in Michigan or even Georgia or Alabama. You want to order it from a nursery in Florida. Uh, and that'll help it, you know that this plant is used to. And even then, if you live in South Florida, don't order a plant that was grown up in Apalachicola. We want it to be um, at least relatively close to where you're at. You'll have a better chance of getting plants that actually grow.
Boy, can I attest to that. When we first moved here, I made that mistake. I bought pear trees from Michigan, and I bought some citrus trees from South Florida, and I didn't realize that the rootstock that's used uh, in South Florida is different from what you use here. It's kind of a funny thing. The rootstock does strange things to the citrus plants. Most citrus is susceptible to nematodes. In our sandy soil, nematodes are a problem. So uh, if you get a rootstock that's resistant to nematodes, that helps out right off the bat. Well, then, if you also get one that has a uh, lower temperature requirement, you can actually lower the freeze point on a plant. So you take sweet oranges and you plant them here. If they're on their own rootstock and they don't die from the nematodes, they freeze at uh, maybe 27 degrees. But you put them on sour orange rootstock, and now they freeze at 18 degrees or something like that. So uh, here we're interested in protecting them from the cold, and we use rootstocks that tend to lower the damaging point from temperature. But when you go south, and that's not a problem anymore, they use rootstocks that make them grow really fast and produce quick. So they use rough lemon. Well, rough lemon is a great rootstock uh, down south, but it doesn't give you the cold protection you need here. So I bought 25 citrus plants from Kmart, put them in, had this beautiful thing, came home every night and tenderly loved and took care of them, gave them fertilizer on the right schedule, water on the right schedule, did everything I could. And through the winter, I lost all but two. And by the end of the second year, I had none of them left, but the rootstock came back. So I let it grow out and found out that they were all on uh, rough lemon rootstock. They didn't have any cold hardiness and really shouldn't have been sold this far north. So, uh, it really is important that you buy a plant uh, for the area that you're going to be in.
Um, so Ann here has a question and a comment. Would love to know the zones for finger limes. Based off what I could see, um, it says hardy in zones 8 to 11, but well, I want to talk about this in a second. That does not mean it'll grow in Florida. You got the finger limes native to Australia, I think. So you have to think about what their climate is like. And then Ann also says there's a kiwi for zone 9A that they're going to try. Fingers crossed, going to plant soon.
Yeah, I think that you could probably do the kiwi. Uh, they've been playing with that long enough that you've got some that are going to work. By the same token, there are finger limes that uh, are okay for our zone, but the problem is not all of the finger limes are good for our zone. So, um, like I say, the release information to the extension offices just occurred. I think it might have been just last week. Anyway, that information is just now coming available, and we will have more information on it soon. They're neat. There's uh, black colored fruit, green colored fruit, red colored fruit, and then inside are these little green or red pellet things that look kind of like caviar. So it's kind of called the citrus caviar. So uh,
Mm-hmm.
be a good plant
Um,
to go.
what I want to talk about here is these plant hardiness zones. So as you can see, we're in Hernando right here. And if I'm sorry about that, if I'm not mistaken, Hernando looks to be in 9B, but Bernie, they just recently changed this. I don't know how up to date this one is. I thought we were now in 10.
No, we're nine.
I see. So pretty much all Hernando is um, in 9B. But the point I want to make, so we see Hernando in 9B. We look over here. Look at all of California. California 9B. California 9 is a whole lot different than Florida 9. Those two things are not the same. And the reason for that is the only thing that plant hardiness zone map is the extreme minimum temperature that's there. So yeah, I guess for 9, negative 6.7 to 1.1. That's Celsius. So, you know, 30 degrees Celsius, whatever. Over here, it may get that cold, but everything else is not the same. You have different humidity, which makes for different temperature, different actual like real world temperatures. So there is actually some other considerations to make besides the zones, because I'm sure that there are some of those finger limes that are listed. Oh yeah, these grow in zone 9, um, and they may grow in zone 9, but they grow in California zone 9 because California is a little bit closer to some of that hotter, drier um, areas of its native Australia. So that's just kind of the point I wanted to illustrate there.
Well, the early um,
Hi there.
the early information that came out on these limes for the extension, uh, they had an interview with one of the farmers that uh, was growing. I think he had 6 varieties, and he went out and he cut them all open and was showing the interviewer the different plants. And eventually, he got to this one plant and he said, "There any sense checking the fruit on it?" He said, "This plant will not really grow here. It's totally unhappy, totally unsatisfactory." So I said, "I don't know where this plant needs to be, but I guess that there are some people that it's been satisfactory." So I didn't know whether it was that plant needed to be hotter or colder, but whatever it was, that he was uh, basically about halfway between here and Miami. So he would definitely have been warmer, but he also been pretty humid. And so that plant did not like those conditions, even though uh, the rest of them, the other 5, were doing very, very well. That plant did very, very bad. So the California thing, you grow roses out there, they don't have the fungal problems that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And um,
And why is that, Bernie?
I believe that has to do a lot with the humidity. They
Mm-hmm.
don't seem to have the fungal problems that we have. And uh, warm, moist uh, are the 2 greatest things for a fungus. If I was a fungus, I would want to go to Florida too. So
Mm-hmm. Not California.
yeah, but
Um,
not
yeah.
California.
So we have. Yeah. No wait. It's over there. It's hot and dry, but here it's hot and wet, and um, that can it really makes it so that different plants grow, even though the extreme minimum temperature may be very similar, even the same. Um, that humidity and other ecological factors have a whole lot more to do with whether a plant will grow here or not, rather than that extreme annual temperature.
Yeah, you can protect a plant from uh, temperature if you have to. You can
Mm-hmm.
modify the soil and you can make it what the plant wants if you have to. But it's very
Yeah.
hard to grow the plant in a dehumidified environment. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're unhappy in the sun uh, from the humidity, there's a lot of plants that are feeling the same way. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if you have enough money, you can grow pretty much whatever you want. I think it's you can create those. You can create whatever conditions you're trying to create. Um, I've seen like pictures and videos of people who are really, really into growing exotic plants, and they have big climate control greenhouses, humidity control greenhouses, and all. Um, so I'm not telling anybody to do that, but you do live in a climate controlled area. Grow
yeah,
some plants in a pot, bring them inside when it's cold. That can actually get you most of the way there, I think.
we had a hotel motel that had uh, palm trees growing in the atrium in Indiana. So uh,
Hmm.
if you want to do it, I'm not sure what it costs, but I'm sure that it was an expensive proposition to maintain those things. But
My
You can do it.
my little brother used to play in a at a like in baseball tournaments, and one of the ones we would always go to was in a Popka. We stayed at this Embassy Inn, and it had an atrium with just like so much like crazy plants just growing in there, and I just remember being like thinking, oh, I bet that costs a lot of money to do to be able to grow plants inside.
That solves the problem though of having a plant that has an insect pest. If you're growing it inside, you can avoid the insect pest. So,
Hmm.
which
Yeah, so if you have an atrium in your
the
house,
citrus nurseries now have to grow the citrus plants under cover uh, because of the contamination from the psyllids, so that they can keep everything under control. But that once they leave the nurseries, who knows what happens to them?
yeah, I mean, like I know that like any of those, I know when you're transporting plants, if they were not, especially if they were not grown, um, if they were pulled out of the ground or whatever, anytime you're doing it, that's a huge stressor. So I can imagine that it probably happens more with trees and stuff like that that are actually grown in the ground. But uh, that's a stressor. I know that stuff's a stressor. And what do we know about stressors on plants? They tend to make them more susceptible to pests, to disease.
Bill
I
was
mean,
told that the university is about to announce some more um, greening resistant citrus, which, if that's true, that could put us back in the citrus business. But if they don't come up with some new citrus plants pretty soon, we're going to be in serious trouble as far as ever having a citrus industry again. We'll lose all the infrastructure.
hmm yeah, I mean, you don't see very many. I mean, almost every citrus grove I've seen in my lifetime has either been built over or is in massive disrepair. So, I mean, there's one I used to go by, heading to DeVary's, turn right by Mission Inn by the golf course, and they had just so many. It was just they had barely hanging on alive orange trees. What it looked like to me, and it's like they got very sparse leaves. You can tell that these things are not diseased and not doing well. And it's like, man, I thought Florida had a famous for growing citrus. What happened?
Well, there's
And I'm
less than
sure, yeah, there's.
40% of the crop left, so
Hmm.
makes
Do you
orange
know of any?
expensive.
Yeah, and Anne says that she agrees about the citrus trees, and it's very scary. I'm sure that when this happens, you will see it because that's something that's kind of near and dear to a lot of people here that I know of. We love some citrus trees.
The finger limes, by the way, tend to show some resistance to greening. So uh, it may be that they're going to take some of the traits out of that.
Yeah,
And, the I can't think of the name. Sugar Bell, something Bell is the one variety that we have right now. It doesn't not get the disease, but the disease is not as dramatically damaging to the tree. So it gets it, and it just continues on, and it still produces viable fruit. Whereas all the rest of the varieties, uh, the fruit tends to uh, deteriorate, and it gets to the point where there any sense keeping the tree, the fruit's no good. The commercial guys can keep the trees going, but the cost of chemicals to keep the tree growing pretty much offsets any profit in being in the citrus industry. So, and the new varieties that are coming out, I understand, do still get it. They suffer from greening, and if a psyllid bites them, it can transfer the disease to other plants from these new varieties. But the new varieties themselves maintain enough health that they produce commercially. So It's like learning to live with an arm that doesn't work quite right. You know, some people that's the end, and other people that doesn't seem to make that much difference. They just keep going on. So
hmm It is super interesting how many different, varieties they come up with citrus they're trying. I mean, it's like I mentioned, it's not just near and citrus isn't just near and dear to us here. It's near and dear to a lot of people in Florida, especially the University of Florida. They love their citrus, so they're uh, I just looking around, they have dozens of citrus varieties they've come up with that you know there's a bunch that are they're available for sale to commercial growers. So I'm sure there's a lot of work being done, and over time, eventually, uh, the like it's a race. It's like an arms race. I like to say with a lot of these pests with fungus and stuff because they're becoming more resistant to our methods of control. This as the same way that we're trying to make our plants more resistant to the pests, and it goes back and forth, and it seems like it'll go on forever. It's really hard to just beat something forever.
yeah, so many of these plant varieties uh, occurred naturally, and somebody recognized the fact that this particular plant uh, was a little better, and they saved the seeds from that, and they grew that. I was reading the history of citrus, and several of the important varieties were just found growing in a normal uh, grove situation. Fruit had fallen down, um, produced a new tree, and the new tree turned out to have some unique characteristic. Nobody knows exactly how it got that characteristic, but if you keep uh, using that plant as to produce more generations, it's like the East Palatka holly. East Palatka holly was found growing in a field in East Palatka, Florida. So all those trees, they only have one sex of East Palatka holly. So all the trees are clones from that
Hmm.
first original tree, and it's there isn't any asexual reproduction, and we've got the same problem now with some of the bananas. They they have the fungal disease that zapped the bananas, and they keep changing what the commercial banana is. Right now, the most popular banana in the world uh, had was resistant to this particular fungus that killed out the last one, and now the fungus is mutated again, and they've lost some plants in some parts of the world. So if they lose all these current banana plants that are used commercially, they're all clones. They don't have the next banana plant. They're clones to the point there was no seed
Mm,
for them even. So it
yeah,
makes it difficult to do a lot of research and try and crossbreed and get rid of a problem. If there is no seed, there is no crossbreeding.
and it takes a lot of time too. You have to think like you're having to wait for these plants to reach maturity uh, while you're breeding them for a lot of in a lot of cases. Bananas are super interesting. It's like a really good case study on uh, what people can do over time. When bananas were the very beginning of like banana cultivation, what those bananas look like versus what bananas look like today, it's crazy. It's a vastly different thing. They were not sweet. They were not the right. They're not the same size or not. It's a world of difference.
Yeah, but they're such a neat and easy plant to grow here. And the beautiful part
Mm-hmm.
about it is they get zapped and they come back, and they get zapped and they come back. And unfortunately, if you actually want bananas, it takes 2 years. And if they get zapped, you lose that, and you have to start over, and it's 2 years. So I had bananas, and gosh, I must have had them for 20 years. Only twice did I ever get a crop. 2 years out of 20. So, but they're kind of a tropical looking thing. They're neat to have around.
Hmm. Well, those and like wild bananas, they have like seeds and stuff in them too. They
Yeah.
don't. They don't look like they don't look like the bananas you buy at the grocery store. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Well, I want to remind everybody, real quick. We'll take a second. If you have any super hard plant pest plant pest questions, you can go ahead and send them over to Bill, and he'll do his best to uh, to answer them. And make sure that you check out the Master Gardener Nursery, open on, was it Wednesdays and Saturdays from 8:30 to 12. That sound about right. Um,
Yeah.
and also the Hernando County Extension Office Facebook page. That's posts a lot of good information and a lot of well, if you're viewing us on Facebook, you're here, but please make sure to check that out. There a lot of time like time appropriate uh, time appropriate information. And I also want to remind people that you can drop your questions in the comments. We'll do our best to answer them, especially if you're watching recorded. Bill likes to go back in and answer them after the fact.
I've had several people that were thinking about putting in new Bahia lawns. And one thing I would
Mm-hmm.
like to bring up is Bahia lawns are a plant that does much better at low pH. So if you're in our area anyway, you really should have a soil test done before you make the decision on the lawns. I had a lady today uh, that she's wanting to put uh, Bahia in. Let me see if I can get this up. There we go. See where it says target pH 5.5, sample pH 7.6. Unfortunately, Bahia is not going to be satisfactory for this lady. It's uh, it can be done, but it will never fill in. It will never sparkle at all. It'll always be scraggy. And if you do a lot of work, when you get done, it's still going to be scraggy. So if your pH is hit 7 or more, forget Bahia. You're going to have to do something else. Unfortunately, in our area, about the only lawn that's really going to be happy at that kind of pH is St. Augustine. And if you don't have a irrigation system, St. Augustine isn't real satisfactory. So uh, there becomes a case of I love the term freedom lawn. Uh, do a freedom lawn. Put in some grass seed, and what doesn't work with the grass seed will turn to weeds. And if you keep it all mowed, it'll be green. You can put in some intentional things, maybe a little mimosa spriggalosa, little pink puff balls, and uh, some.
You can reduce your amount of turf. Period. You can
Yeah,
have like make some big old mulch beds. Put some landscape plants in there. They look real nice. They reduce your. They need less water than turf. It is an option. Reducing turf is one of the best ways to reducing the turf you have to irrigate rather is one of the best ways to reduce your water use overall. Cheaper water bill. You save it, conserve it. It's really important.
I had some gentleman come in, and he had St. Augustine. He had a little problem, and we went through what needed to be done to solve the problem. And we were talking, and it sounded like he had done things the right way. And I said, man, I'd really kind of like to see your lawn. So he stopped by and showed me a picture. I was stunned. There was only like 10% grass in the front yard, and the rest of it was probably the most beautifully landscaped lawn in his entire community. It was absolutely gorgeous. So uh, he's one of these people that his problem was a square, maybe 3 foot square, and he was on top of it. I mean, this guy obviously knew what he was doing, and
Hmm.
what he was
Yeah,
asking
if it's
for
only a
was,
3 foot square,
yeah,
I'm gonna
it's
put
what I
sod
do
down.
about this 3 foot square before it gets bad. You have to really respect somebody that does that much. That uh,
Hmm.
because to get it there was a lot of effort. To keep it there, once he had it set up, didn't take that much. But boy, it took a lot of thinking and a lot of effort,
Hmm.
and it's beautiful. And I like that. We've had some uh, master gardeners. In fact, the very first person with your job uh, was great at landscaping, and he was a great landscape architect. He ended up uh, leaving this job and going to the villages for about 4 times the money. If you can imagine somebody quitting for only 4 times the money. So uh, I'm sure you'd say if somebody else offered you 4 times the money, but not everybody, I guess, is as
Love it here.
dedicated.
Yeah. Um, so we have a question here. Is it true small rocks are not good? Too hot. Rocks do get really hot, and that's why the recommendation is not to use rocks at all. To use mulch. Mulch is great. Mulch is going to
Rocks are
save
okay
you.
if they aren't under the plant. You know,
Yeah. I mean, I know that like you don't want to use rocks like mulch because rocks are not mulch. That's the use them for a walkway. They're really good for a walkway because they're permeable. The water can go through them. You're not contributing to runoff. But rocks are not mulch. So put your mulch down. Don't mulch with little rocks. Um, I know, but they do get hot, and if they're under a plant, they're not doing exactly what they should. Uh, Not serving the purpose that mulch serves. Southern Reporter says, but I love grass. A lot of people love grass. Believe me, a lot of people love grass. But reducing your amount of turf is a great way to conserve water because you have to irrigate it less. It might be, it's kind of subjective, but I like mulch beds. I like how they look. Think it's nice.
the thing
And
about grass is that grass is to Florida as palm trees are to Michigan. Grass does not belong here. You are trying to grow something totally out of its realm to have a lawn. That's why there's so few grass seeds that will even grow at all. And they don't want to be here for the
mhm,
same reason that palm trees don't want to grow in Michigan, grass doesn't want to grow in Florida. That grasses are a northern plant, and grass in Florida didn't really exist until probably the 50s.
yeah,
So
but
prior
and you
to
have to
that,
think,
we didn't have any grass that would actually grow here. It it used to be that people here had chickens in their front yard, and it wasn't until uh, a lot of northern people moved here and wanted grass like they had up north that grass was even a plant that was introduced. And it's not a very successful introduction. I am the first to admit that grass is one of the hardest plants there is to grow in Florida. If you do a really good job on grass and your lawn is really good and you're the person that did it, then you're probably a really good gardener on any plant that you can name, because there is nothing harder to do than to make something grow where it doesn't want to be. So that's grass. Now, if you love grass and you don't mind expending the effort and getting the education that it takes, then grass is a wonderful plant and you should have it. But so many people move here thinking that uh, what worked up north, when our lawn was beautiful, we would go out and put some weed and feed down once a year. And when we had bare spots, we'd get a new box of Tuffy's grass seed, and we'd throw some Tuffy's grass seed over the bare spot. And just like magic, we had a beautiful lawn again. That doesn't happen here. That's not what we're doing for a lawn. So, but lawns can be done, and my job is to tell people how to do it. The sad part about it is I only get to talk to them after the fact, after it's already gone. You know, you generally by the time you've reached the point of no return, they show up here and say, "What do I do?" Well, the answer is you resod, and it's a very expensive proposition. It's a terrible lesson to learn, but I cannot overemphasize the very first thing about taking care of lawns is mowing them at the right height. And if you go buy a new mower and you've got St. Augustine lawn, you probably can't set the mower high enough to mow the lawn at its proper height. So
unless you have like a big old zero turn or something like that,
yeah,
those you definitely can. But your push mower or even a lot of the riding mowers, not happening. What's the recommended height there, Bernie, for St. Augustine?
well, it's absolute minimum 3.5, and the healthiest is at 4 inches. And that's an important number for a lot of reasons. But that 4 inches, 3.5 inches for Bahia, 4 inches for for Floritam St. Augustine. There's some other St. Augustines, and there's different mow heights for each grass. So you really need the mow heights for the exact variety of the grass that you've got. But that's the number one most important thing.
Here in Hernando County, we almost exclusively are St. Augustine is Floritam. Also, you have to remember you never want to cut off more than a third of the blade at a time, um, and which means do some quick math right here. When your grass, you can't mow it until it's at 6 inches to cut it back down to 4. Um, you know what I'm saying? Like you don't want to you don't want to just it gets to be 5 or 6 inches tall and you cut it down to 2.
Well,
The grass is not
no,
going to
don't
do
do
well.
that. If you want to mow it at 5 inches and cut it back to 4, there's no problem with that. But don't let it go to 8 inches and then cut it back to 4. And it's just one of those things that the problems with weeds and fungal diseases and the amount of water that it takes are all related to the mow height. So it is the most important single thing. And if you don't want to have to mow as much, you don't want to fertilize as much. If the grass is green and it's only growing 2 inches a month, you only have to mow it once a month. That's wonderful. But if you fertilize it with high nitrogen fertilizer and keep it in this, it's growing 2 inches a week, and you're mowing every week, or it's growing 3 or 4 inches between mowings, you're actually damaging things. You're over fertilizing. So there's a lot of things that come into play, but the very first one is mow height. And
mowing at that appropriate height. That's what allows it to have that strong root system, and that strong root system was what allows it to uptake water from deeper in the ground, be more pest resistant, etc. So if you've taken anything from today, take out that mow height is everything.
the old right plant, right place thing too. That
right plant, right plant.
Don't plant
right place. Yes.
Don't plant Bahia if you
Don't
got
plant grass in Florida.
pH. But right plant's kind of that's kind of a neat thing. That's the number one thing, and number one rule for Florida friendly landscaping is right plant, right place. And when you do that, it takes care of so many problems. It's amazing. And the way you learn all this stuff is you make mistakes, or you go out and get an education. So it's cheaper to get the education ahead of time, but it's more meaningful when you make the mistakes. If you're a person that
Hmm.
learns from mistakes at all, every time you make a mistake, something goes wrong with what you're planning. Remember that. Don't just write it off as that's the way it goes. If you planted something there and it didn't grow, and you planted something else there and it didn't grow, maybe there's something about there that's a problem, or maybe that the plants that you're putting in don't want the sun, or they don't want the shade, or whatever. Learn something from the fact. I put two different kind of plants there, and they didn't grow. And instead of thinking that I'll get a third plant and put something else in there, there's probably something wrong with the plants. Start asking yourself, why did it not want to grow there? Uh, that was the beginning of me learning to be a master gardener. Was uh, I took a little quickie course, and they explained that plants have spots that they want to be, and if you put it in the wrong spot, it isn't going to be happy. Well, I had plants that weren't doing well. I dug them up and I moved them to other spots. And when I found out that you can do that, that you can find a place and the things will work, I started having fun being a gardener. And I like bromeliads. I think bromeliads are a neat plant because they like the same kind of place as I do. They want to be in a shady, cool, comfortable little place. I want to put my chair in a shady, cool, comfortable place. I don't want to sit in the sun either. So uh, you find me sitting there in the
Oh,
shade watching my bromeliads grow.
and both of you guys happy as can
Yeah.
be. Um, moving down, we got another question here. I have very sandy soil. What can I plant in my yard that is somewhat green? Well, that
There's a
depends
lot of
on what your goal is. I think if you're looking for ground covers, well, what are some ground cover options? Um, I think I like recommend perennial peanut. It's pretty easy to grow. It reseeds
yeah.
itself, so you can um, just it spreads and from clumps. I just told someone that works here yesterday. I gave them the advice. They're talking about their just need something to cover up. I'm not walking in my yard a lot. I was like perennial peanut. That's the answer. It's a good one.
The thing about sandy soil actually grows things quite well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there are a few problems in that it tends to have a loss of nutrients quicker because it has a higher rate of uh, water going through it. But it's easy to add some organic material and grow about anything. The sandy soil is an excellent base to start from. And you find that once you start putting things on it, the sandy soil naturally starts accumulating more organic material, and it gets better. If you add organic material, it has about a 2-year life in the soil. So uh, if you want to go in and put some organic material down, some manure, some compost being the absolute best thing you can use for a
Mm-hmm.
starter. Uh, you can then get the soil up to where you can plant anything. And once you get things going in the sand, they tend to keep going in the sand. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's sunny and sandy, uh, there's like Mimosa strigosa, it's got the little pink puff balls. Uh, the uh, Eco Turf, the perennial peanut, has little yellow flowers. Um, those kind of things. There's frog fruit. Uh, there's several plants
Railroad vine.
uh,
Yeah.
that solve the problem of just a ground cover. And if you did absolutely nothing, something grows on there to cover it anyway. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't intentionally put things in, weeds are going to grow. It's just that the weeds don't necessarily get real filling because the weeds tend to shade each other out. But Uh, that's one of those things. Um, we talk about the book, uh, which I guess there's a newer version of this book, but uh, this book has a plant guide in the back, and it has a whole list of things that you can use as ground cover. And I don't remember what the uh, address of the location of that is online, but as I understand it, the plant guide is online.
It's on the FFL website, which is on the IFAS website. So
Okay. So if you want a list of all these plants, uh, go to the IFAS website and look up the plant guide. It's a great guide, and it gives you a lot of ideas. And another thing, always go to your local nursery.
hmm
The local nursery people know the area, they know what grows, and even if you don't buy any plants, if you just talk to them, they'll give you some suggestions of things that generally work, and you can take a look at the plants and see if there's things that you actually like, and almost everything they're selling is going to do well. Whereas if you go to one of the big box stores, they sell a lot of plants that do very, very well. I mean, I don't knock the plants, but they have a lot of people that come in that want to buy specific things and don't care whether they should or not. And they're in business to make money, and they sell whatever makes them money.
hmm
The
Yeah,
local
because the
nursery
nursery,
is
yeah,
in business
they
to
want
make
your plants
money,
to do well.
and he makes his money by having you tell other people and having you come back. So
Yeah,
they tend to sell things that really work because their reputation depends on it. So uh,
yeah.
I would recommend that if you haven't done it, do that. Go to one of the local bigger nurseries. Take a look at the landscaping plants that they have. See if there's anything you like, and start visualizing incorporating some of those plants into your landscaping, and you'll find that if you tell those people I have this soil and this kind of sun and everything, they'll tell you, well, maybe you shouldn't plant that particular plant in
hmm
that particular location. Whereas if you go to one of the big box stores, they'll sell you the same plant, but they won't tell you where it goes. They don't know. They're not gardening people. So
Yeah. And then just to wrap up here, uh, I had a little mimosa, but it died. I loved it. Oh, I need the book. Yes, and you can get one. If you come to the utility department, I can give you one. If you go to the extension office, Bernie can give you one. And if you just ask, you can also find the book at this link right here, the online version. I have it under FFL Guide. So you type that in right there, and it'll be the second link down. But what you can also find on this page is the sign up for our monthly compost bin and rain barrel workshops, where Dr. Lester talks about um, compost bins. I talk about rain barrels. If you're a resident of Hernando County, you can get one for free. And like Bernie said, adding that organic material, especially compost, is a great way to help your sandy soil. So come get a compost bin for free if you live in Hernando County. You also get a rebate if you're a Hernando County Utilities customer if you purchase a rain barrel from me there. Um, Other than that, I think that's about all the time we have. If you have any questions for me regarding rain barrels or watering rules or anything else you want to talk about, just shoot me an email right there, copits@hernandocounty.us. But go ahead and wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for coming and listening to us today. And I want to thank Bernie for being a great co-host. Huh?
well, it's fun
So,
as usual,
uh,
and we'll do this again next week, I hope.
yep. We will see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Bye now.